This is Minister Williams of the 201 Church of Christ. It's a joy being with you on today. We would like to thank with you on the subject of overcoming fear. Overcoming fear. 2 Timothy 1, verse 3 through verse 17. I thank God whom I serve from my Father, and in a pure conscience. How unceasing is my remembrance of thee, and in my supplication night and day. I long to see thee, remembering thy tears, that I may be filled with joy, having been reminded of the unfeigned faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois, and in thy mother Eunice, and I am persuaded in thee also. For which cause I put thee in remembrance, that thou shouldst stir up the gift of God which is in thee, the laying on of my hands. Verse 7, for God gave us not the spirit of fearfulness, but of power and love and discipline. And briefly today, we will talk with you on that subject then, overcoming fear. It seems that Timothy had allowed the fear to get in his way of doing his job as an evangelist. And Paul writes to him to encourage him not to let fear get in the way of his doing the will of God. And his point is that God is not the author of fear, but fear comes by means of the devil. Well, the Greek word for fear used here is the delia, referring to cowards, that results from the lack of moral strength. And Timothy may have been fearful to fulfill his duties because of the timid personality and the intense opposition he faced from false teachers. Well, the reason people are sometimes fearful of being faithful to God, well, they feel that enemies are about them, and the opposition are stronger than they are. Well, because they feel the threat of harm, whether real or imagined. This threat can be for our physical or emotional or psychological or well-being. While there are certain things that triggers fear in most of us, and we can learn to become afraid of doing what we need to do for God in this life. Well, some examples of common fear. And the darkness fears people, get people afraid sometimes and prevent them from doing their job. The heights and of flying, maybe social interaction with people or rejection, maybe snakes or rodents or spiders or other animals. Well, and death and dying sometimes get in the way of individuals doing and what they have been elected to do. And it appears that Timothy was fearful. And he was fearful to continue to use the gift of God, which was given him by the laying on of the hands of Paul. And Paul reminds him to stir up the gift. And don't allow fear to prevent you from doing what you have been assigned to do. And perhaps he was fearful that he was shameful of the testimony of the Lord. And Paul as a prisoner, and he did not do his job as he should have. And perhaps that he was fearful of suffering hardship with the gospel. And one thing about it, that whenever we choose to follow the gospel, and we can get ready for the hardship that comes as a result. And Paul reminds Timothy that God gives us not a spirit of fearfulness, but a power, love, and sound mind, or discipline. And power, beloved, comes from God, not fear. and fear comes from the devil, but God gives power. Well, now the word power and comes from the Greek word dunamis, in which means might, strength, force, capability. If God gives us a job to do, and he will ultimately give us the capability of the might and the strength to get the job done. And Paul reminds Timothy that such fear does not come from God's Spirit, but, beloved, it comes from Satan. And we need to know that too, that whenever we are not afraid of doing God's will, it's not God, but it comes from the devil. In Romans 8, verse 15 and 16, and for you receive not the spirit of bondage again unto fear, but you receive the spirit of adoption, and whereas we cry, Abba, Father, the Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit, and that we are children of God. And so we receive not the spirit of bondage or slavery, but we receive the spirit of freedom. And in this text, Paul refers to the courage and to fulfill his ministerial duties, namely the proclamation of the gospel of Christ, or the preaching of the gospel of Christ. Remember that when Jesus came from the dead and he boarded a cloud and went back to heaven, he said before he boarded it, that in Acts 1 verse 8, but ye shall receive power, and when the Holy Spirit is come upon you, and ye shall be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and unto the utmost parts of the earth. Power, beloved, when the Lord gives you a job to do, he gives you also the capability or the power to get it done. Now, he gave the apostles 9 miraculous gifts that came to get the job done. In 1 Corinthians 2 and verse number 4, and in my speech and my preaching, and were not in persuasive words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of the power. And so Paul, beloved, and he was not afraid when he went about preaching, and he did not go out to show how smart he was, but, beloved, he went out but in the demonstration of the Spirit and of the power of God. And in Ephesians 3 verse 16, and that he who grant you, according to the riches of his glory, that you may be strengthened with power through his Spirit in the inward man. And listen, Timothy had the power to get the job done, but yet somehow Timothy was just afraid, it seems, and he was afraid to use the gift that God had given him by the laying on of the apostles' hand. And apparently, and he was ashamed of the testimony of Jesus Christ and Paul as a prisoner, and that he was fearful of suffering hardship with the gospel. But listen, beloved, and when God calls you, and he gives you the power that you need to get the job done. And I'm reminded of Joshua, Moses' servant. Only be strong and very courageous. And this goes to Timothy. Only be strong and very courageous, and to observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded thee. And turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou mayest have good success whithersoever thou goest. And this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate on it day and night, and that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then shalt thou make thy way prosperous, and then shalt thou have good success. And have not I commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage, and be not affrighted, and neither be thou dismayed. For Jehovah thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. So, Timothy apparently had forgotten that God is the author of power and not fear. So he left his power, his dunamis, and apparently he was more controlled than by fear. But not only does God give power to Timothy and to us, but he also gives love. And you know, love is wishing the highest and the best and for another man. And really, love is correct thinking. And love is good mental health. If you want to know good mental health, then get to know agape, the love of the Bible. When people hate, that's not good mental health, and that's not love. That's twisted thinking and not correct thinking. And God gives us love, the greatest of the Christian values. It is, beloved, that of love. Love, well, God is love and has demonstrated that love in everything that he does. That if you look around in this world, all that you see, it is a demonstration of God's love. And Paul compares faith, hope, and love, and he concludes that the greatest of these is love. In 1 Corinthians 13, verse 13, God is love, agape. The love, the theme of the Bible, can only be defined by the nature of God. God, beloved, that he is love. And John affirms that God is love. In 1 John 4 and verse number 8, God does not merely love, and he is love. So God, beloved, he does not give fear, but he gives power, and he gives love. That everything that God does flows from his love. That if you ever doubt whether God loves you, look around at what you have, and you can see the love of God. And John emphasized repeatedly that God the Father loves the Son. In John 5, verse 20, and John 17, verse 23 and 26, and that the Son loves the Father. In John 14, verse 31, because the Father loves the Son, and he makes his will known to him. And Jesus in turn demonstrates his love to the Father and through his submission and to his obedience. The theme of the entire Bible, that is the self-revelation of the God of love. And so God gives love and not fear. And John emphasized repeatedly that God the Father, that he loves the Son. And we need, beloved, learn to love the Son. Well, that in the Garden of Eden, God commanded that you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And for when you eat of it, then you will surely die. In Genesis 2 and verse 17, and we are not prepared then. And when God looks for Adam after he sinned, calling out, and where art thou? God seeks Adam not to put him to death, but to reestablish a relationship with him. And God is a lover and will not allow sin to stand between us and him. Because all we need to do is depend upon God. And so now we say now to Timothy that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. He'll give you the power to get the job done, to do the ministerial job that is assigned to him as an evangelist. And finally, God does not give fear, but he gives love, he gives power, and finally a sound mind. And the American Standard Version says discipline. And self-discipline is the most important part of success. And if you want to be successful in life, you need to have discipline or a sound mind. God gives a sound mind. What sin does, it twists the mind and the thinking, the emotion. in everything that one has. Otherwise, you will be knocking out otherwise, if you don't have discipline, otherwise you will be knocked out by people who are disciplined or have sound minds. And you will have unlimited potential to reach the greatest level in your life. All you need is self-discipline or a sound mind. And so why waste time going and start thinking that will make you close to accomplishing your goal? A sound mind, beloved, a discipline, and gives you the value of time. And when you have a sound mind and discipline, you know that time is valuable. A sound mind will master your emotion. A sound mind gives you the ability to the knowledge of good and bad. A sound mind, beloved, will make yourself a better performer in life. You need a sound mind and discipline. And Timothy had lost his sound mind and discipline. A sound mind will help you to become active in the work of God. A sound mind, a discipline will be will help you to be a multitasker in life. A sound mind makes you self-aware of the devil and aware of the love of God. A sound mind, beloved, will help you, your weight, fitness, and health. A sound mind, beloved, will help you to become the best person that you can be in this life. And so then how do you get around fear? You need to go to God and realize that he's not the author of fear, but that God gives, beloved, power, that God gives love, which is correct thinking, and God finally, and he gives us a sound mind or discipline. May the Lord bless you and keep you.